Okay, this is a lot better. So we made it to Guatemala, a country of ancient Mayan roots and a complex history marked by political turbulence. Today, it's a place where tradition collide with modernity. So let's go and check if Bitcoin plays a role in this country's rapidly changing future.
We have indeed made it to Guatemala, and it wasn't exactly straightforward. After that wicked sunset in El Zonte that finished the last episode, and about 3 hours of sleep, we had to get up in the middle of the night to catch our ride.
Saturday night, and it's 2:43 a.m.
One border crossing, 2 nervous passport checks, and several hours later, we found ourselves dropped off in
Antigua, Guatemala.
beautiful, yes, our destination,
Wasn't on my list.
not at all.
We're supposed to go straight to Bitcoin Lake.
So after wandering the cobblestone streets of Antigua for about 3 hours, mildly confused but also amazed, we finally caught our next ride to where we were actually going. Lake Atitlan. Oh, and by the way, because this series is approaching the end, unfortunately there isn't any time for that usual recap. That means I won't be reminding you that Carolina and I are on a journey through Latin America to find out if Bitcoin works as freedom money, and that I'm not going to explain how instead of finding answers, we just keep collecting more questions. Also, I won't be telling you about that little epiphany I had in the last episode, in the middle of the jungle in El Salvador, realizing how Bitcoin is borderless, permissionless, and, unstoppable money. Sorry, there just isn't any time for that recap. You'll just have to watch all the episodes on your own. Anyway, the best way to capture the unique feeling that awaited us at Lake Atitlan is perhaps through its main transportation, the lanchas. As we saw in the intro of the episode, the lanchas are small root boats that serve as public transport on the lake. Most of them depart from Panajachel, the lake's unofficial capital, and makes up a web that connects the different towns located around the lake. Thanks to the lanchas, there's little need for cars, and on land, tuk-tuks handle most of the local travel, weaving through the narrow streets with ease. The towns around the lake are each unique and have long attracted tourists with their volcanic backdrop, vibrant culture, and deep indigenous roots. However, that's not why we've come here. We're here because back in 2022, a Bitcoin circular economy project was launched here. Lago Bitcoin. Bitcoin Lake in English, that is. And arriving here gives me a bit of the same feeling as arriving in Berlin. There's maybe not a Bitcoin sign on every corner, but it's also not far from it. At a local coffee shop, we meet a guy whose laugh just seemed to instantly light up the room. Eliasar, the man in charge of the day-to-day operations at Lago Bitcoin. We have a talk with him to try and get a better grasp of what Lago Bitcoin is all about.
Well, Lago Bitcoin, we are 2 guys now behind this project. We have 17 towns around the lake. My goal is to orange peel all of them, bring Bitcoin to their communities, orange peel all of them, orange peel, orange peel, orange peel, orange peel, orange peel. And we have 3 main goals. Our first one is education. We want to continue educating people about Bitcoin. We start already on 2023. We work with kids, we work with Básico School, we work with Career School. Right now, on 2025, we're gonna start our first university. That's a private university. The other main goal is orange peeling. It's good to always orange peel a few businesses so Bitcoiners can come and spend Bitcoins. The other main goal is the mining. We're looking for ways how to mine, because I think that everybody has to know what is mining, how mining works. A lot of people can buy a miner. If you can buy it, you can mine Bitcoins, right? So That's something that we looking for, and that we start mining with used cooking oil. We used to fire this engine with used cooking oil. Right now it's not working.
Right.
I don't know what's the problem with the engine, because it didn't generate more electricity.
And where did you get the oil from?
From all this, I mean, a lot of restaurants from here. It was
Perfect.
free for me, so I just used to burn them. Right now we are working with plastic. We can get diesel out of the plastic, so we can run a diesel engine and we can mine bitcoins. And this is diesel that we get out of the plastic.
Right.
All the plastic that we have, this bottle, clothes, everything that we use, cups, everything. This is just a proof of concept. We're looking for how to raise some funds to make this bigger. Future goals is to have a mining facility around the lake. So in this place we have around 7 rivers, and we have active volcano. If we can buy a bigger piece of land, if we can buy that, we can mine out of the rivers, we can mine out of the volcano, we can do a geothermal volcano, but we need a couple of $1 million. So this is our little project, and it's called Kaboom.
I heard rumors that this guy applied for the parking lot over there. Instead, he's afraid of Kaboom.
Kaboom. Yep. Those are the 3 things that we're doing. We're not rushing. This is for a long term. But we are excited for what's going on behind this project.
Is it necessary to have politicians and big corporations that facilitate Bitcoin adoption, or can you just start bottom up?
Well, Guatemala, we can use any currency in Guatemala, and Bitcoin is a currency in El Salvador. So I think that we don't have a problem yet. I think that if you start like El Salvador, it's easier. But in our way, we start bottom up. I mean, that's the way that we can do in our country. We can't go and talk to a president. I think that going bottom up is gonna be complicated but secure, because you're telling people what's going on, and not like the president. When a president say something is faster, and from the bottom to going like the way that we're doing his is slower, but I think we're gonna get there soon.
Eliazar has given me something to chew on. The ambitious mining plans and his own prototype hidden away at a parking spot was pretty cool.
No one will steal them.
Yeah, they don't know what to do with.
But his thoughts on bottom-up versus top-down adoption also gave me something deeper to reflect on. Lago Bitcoin now has over 100 businesses accepting Bitcoin, despite no law or precedent backing the project. Eliazar noted that while this makes progress slower, it can also build more trust. So will adoption end up being more robust if it's purely led by the community and not imposed from above? Another point Eliazar made was that Guatemala's laws are permissive when it comes to money. Although Guatemala has its own currency, the quetzal, the law doesn't restrict using alternatives like Bitcoin. Can this make Bitcoin adoption more grassroots? This is perhaps the point where I usually spiral down into my mode of bottomless questions. But Eliazar may have sensed just that, because he steps in just in time with the perfect reset. First, a sunset. A neat little trick that had prevented me from going down several bottomless rabbit holes of questions previously. However, Eliazar also have a new card up his sleeve for a night out in Panajachel. And just like that, it's time to move on. We catch a ride towards Ciudad de Guatemala early in the morning, the sun barely rising behind the volcanoes, still watching over Lake Atitlan. The first leg of the journey is deceptively smooth, clean stretches of Guatemalan asphalt, cut through rolling hills, framed by small towns. Then, just outside a larger town, our driver receives a voice message. A strike has shut down a key portion of the highway. He doesn't say much. Instead, he slows down a little, processes this update, and then silently pulls the wheel to the right of the main road and straight into the jungle. Maybe there's a new epiphany awaiting me, like in the jungle of El Salvador. Anyway, the terrain changes instantly. We're no longer cruising. Now we're more sort of like crawling on dirt roads. At times, the potholes are bigger than the actual road, and the only constant is the volcanoes still visible in the distance. This detour adds hours to our trip, and it displays something that I'd heard several times over the past days. Guatemala's political system is anything but stable. The last presidential election was riddled with accusations of fraud, suppression, and judicial manipulation. But then, on the other hand, Eliezer also noted that Guatemala by law doesn't restrict its citizens to any single currency. Eventually, a city emerges in the horizon. We may just make it after all. And as we enter Ciudad de Guatemala, the seat of power in Guatemala, I'm reminded that Lake Atitlan is the exception, and that traditional finance still rules the game. However, there is someone here in the capital that might be able to help me with some of my questions. But first, I need his help to light this big cigar I all of a sudden find myself holding.
You just try to burn it through consistently.
Carlos Torrejo has asked me to meet him in a dimly lit cigar bar tucked into one of Ciudad de Guatemala's quieter corners. It's the kind of place where time slows down and where the leather chairs make sure the conversation isn't rushed. Carlos has this posture of quiet confidence, the kind that comes from having navigated power and survived its fallout. And in order to understand Carlos' narrative, I think we should get to know him a little better.
Born and raised in Guatemala City. My father was starting a new business, and so I came back from, I was living in Costa Rica, working there, and so I came back to help him with a new business. And so we were trying to get that off the ground. My dad's been an entrepreneur all his life, and then one day some of the companies in our business group were added to the United States Treasury Office of Foreign Asset Control specially designated narcotics kingpin and terrorist watch list, which is called the OFAC list. It's basically the kiss of death in the financial system. We found out overnight reading the newspaper, and that made it very clear to me the value and the importance of censorship-resistant money. When a bureaucrat in another country can just press a button and erase your ability to use your own money without any opportunity to defend yourself, without any warning. People assumed if we were added to the list, it must have been because we were doing something. It took us 2 years to get off of the list. There was no sorry, no nothing. And eventually the businesses went bankrupt. And so effectively 35 years of my father's work and legacy was destroyed. I was exposed to the ideas of Bitcoin. And then throughout this time, I was also a volunteer in the election system. In Guatemala, we have a voting system that is kind of a civilian army. It's like a voluntary service. And so if you're concerned about the legitimacy of the election, the easiest thing for you to do is to participate in the election so that you protect it, right? And so I did that in 2011 and 2015, and I fell in love with the process. And I realized that elections, or more specifically voting systems, are effectively consensus algorithms. And so I saw many, many similarities between how Bitcoin consensus algorithm works and how our voting system works. And so in 2019, I was plugged into the system when the system collapsed.
The system collapsed during the elections. That's pretty severe.
And so for the first time in over 30 years, since our democracy got rebooted in 1985, we had people from all sides of the democratic spectrum accusing the system of fraud. There's effectively a website where the results are published. That website collapsed on election night. The media reports the news based on this official source.
Right.
It comes from the election authorities. And basically on election night in 2019, the media was, telling the story, yellow party is winning, purple party, and then, the feed is gone. Like, we don't know what happened.
Yeah.
Check back tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then you check back tomorrow and, now it's red party. And then, the feed is gone again. And then it's back on, and then it's off, on, off, on, off, on. The worst possible scenario you can imagine. Our system is paper-based, but we publish the results through an internet digital system. And so what collapsed was the internet digital system. You still had the paper, but people didn't have the patience to do a full thing. And so I realized our system effectively didn't work anymore because people weren't willing to do the work. You had politicians that didn't care about the reality of the consensus. Rather, they were negotiating the outcome. And so I tried to fix it in 2019, but I failed miserably. And so then in 2023, I came back. The effort is now known as digitalwitness.io. So that's the website, digitalwitness.io. In Spanish, it's fiscaldigital.net. And basically what we propose is a real-time election audit of the entire voting system using Bitcoin. In order to do so, the documents that are published to the internet have to be timestamped to Bitcoin so that they cannot be altered without leaving a trace. And the company emerged called Simple Proof, where I now work. And they were contracted by the election authorities to timestamp, using the open timestamp protocol, all of the hundreds of thousands of documents. And so basically you use Bitcoin as a type of clock. And so if anyone tries to rewrite history, it becomes obvious. And so instead of having these arguments of what you think versus I think, it's purely what happened. And then separately, as an election auditor, what I did was I download all of that data. And so we created a tool by which anyone could get online and use their phones to earn sats in exchange for auditing the election in real time. And so within 48 hours, we had checked and verified the presidential results to see whether or not the official result matched what exactly was published via Bitcoin, and thereby determined that there was, in our opinion, a 0.001% chance that election fraud could have occurred. So the government from 2019, I believe, was a product of election fraud. In 2023, they lose, and immediately they accuse the winners of election fraud. But really, we checked everything. And so actually what Bitcoin allows us to do is prove that the accusations by the justice system that are literally in court right now, and there are people in jail right now because of this, are being accused of election fraud. You can prove that those accusations are baseless using Bitcoin. However, the court system here, it's not exactly a functioning justice system, but I hope that eventually the case will be made at the Supreme Court, where the Supreme Court will have to use Bitcoin to determine whether or not election fraud actually took place. And that would be, I think, the first time in the world where an election result would be determined thanks to Bitcoin. Now I work with Simple Proof, and we are offering these services to anyone in the world, and hope to build a world where no one can rewrite history, and we can use Bitcoin to do that.
What would you say is the current state of Bitcoin adoption in Guatemala?
We are very, very early. That being said, I'm sure that we are farther along than other places, simply because El Salvador is right next door. Bukele is everyone's hero. If Bukele were allowed to run for presidency, and legally nothing is stopping him, the Constitution of Central America allows for Bukele to run for president in Guatemala and Honduras, potentially even Nicaragua and Costa Rica, but I would assume he would only consider running for Honduras and Guatemala. He would win. He would have won last year here. But I do think that particularly Guatemala has a very unique circumstance in being what I would say is the fastest bottom-up adopter in the Bitcoin race. You could argue that the United States is going to win, but After the United States, I would say Guatemala has a lot of characteristics that might lead for many people to adopt Bitcoin quickly. We depend on remittances. So everyone has someone that sends them money. And so Bitcoin as a transnational instant settlement network is a very easy sell. And fortunately, there's been communities here in Guatemala that have been trying to teach as many people as possible. And so I think we have made a significant dent. I think Guatemala is an interesting demonstration that a small group of dedicated individuals can reach enough people where we can kind of push without it being kind of this top-down thing where you got lucky in El Salvador, where Bukele was orange-pilled and he was the ruler of the country with basically complete power. Here, it's much more of a bottom-up thing where we're getting closer and closer to a aha moment on a kind of social level.
In your view, is bottom-up adoption sort of the true adoption, and then top-down is more like speeding it up, or
I don't care, man. Anything that gets more people using Bitcoin faster, the better. If I had a president right now saying, "Oh, let's adopt Bitcoin as a strategic reserve. Let's offer a solution like Chivo where everyone can use it," let's fucking go. Like, there's no reason not to do it. Rather, there's more reason to do it faster.
I heard that Guatemala might be a good country for Bitcoin adoption because laws here states that you can use any currency as legal tender.
There's this law called the Law of Libre Negociación de Divisas, the freedom to negotiate currency. So it states that anyone can negotiate any contract using whatever currency you want. And so in 2018, the Central Bank of Guatemala came out and said, Bitcoin does not have any regulation. Enter at your own risk. Sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Our time in Guatemala is coming to an end, and with it, so is our Latin American adventure. Only one stop left on our journey, Ciudad de Mexico. Is it realistic to expect answers to all our questions there? Or should we start crowdfunding season 2 already? Or maybe pitch it to Netflix, add drone shots and
more dramatic voiceovers.
I'm doing it again, aren't I? Creating new questions instead of giving you answers. So maybe that is the answer? Or maybe I have just developed a mild addiction to dramatic build-ups and never really had any real plan for closing the series in the first place. Either way, we got a flight to catch. The last one.